Hello, and welcome to Improbable Things. I'm J. Grace Pennington, and this is my podcast where I share 6 improbable thoughts before breakfast, which to me means 6 thoughts related to writing or reading or storytelling in some form. So I just jotted down my 6 thoughts for the day, and I am ready to share them with everybody. Before I get started today, I wanted to just do a little shout out to Kate Willis, who is a fellow author that I've known for quite a while, and I've been able to do an interview for her blog this week and working on a guest post as well, and she did such a lovely post earlier this week about this podcast and how much she's enjoyed it, and it meant so much to me because sometimes, it's just me sitting here in the early morning every week rambling on for 15 to 20 minutes, and I just start wondering, is this worth doing? Does anybody care about this? And so hearing that someone has been able to enjoy it just really is so encouraging. So I thank you so much, Kate, and I hope that you enjoyed this week. So the number 1, when it comes to currently writing, I'm actually going ahead and starting work on the next Firmament book. I mentioned that I finished up Humanoid last week, I believe, and I decided to just go ahead and jump right into getting the drafting on the next one. And this is what I used to do with the Firmament series. When I first started out, I would make sure that I had the next book written before I published the last one. And then I stopped doing that for a while. And then this last time I almost did it because Humanoid actually was mostly written, all but the last few chapters, once I got Eleftheria out. So I decided that's just a really great way for me to keep momentum going and to feel like I definitely have somewhere to go next with the series. And so I went ahead and worked on an outline for book 9 this week, and I'm hoping to actually start a little bit of drafting on it today. Not a ton of work, but just kind of dip my toe in it, as it were. And so I don't believe I've announced the title of this one yet. So I thought I would go ahead and share that Firmament book 9 is going to be called Intoxication. So you can make whatever speculations you want to about that. And I am excited about it. I did realize when I came to it that I had absolutely no plot whatsoever. Like literally, I just had one little seed of an idea, of a theme, and of, a couple particular events, but literally no plot. So that's what I sat down and did earlier this week, is kind of come up with the basics of a plot and generally how the story is going to go. And I think it's going to be a really good one. So number 2, when it comes to the publishing of Eleftheria, there are 16 or I guess 17 chapters out as of today. And I believe there's 22 total, so we're getting close to the end. And I think I mentioned last week that it hadn't been extremely successful necessarily. My royalties had been very low. So I did know that on Vella they also do bonuses, and I'm not sure how those are divided up among the authors, honestly. And I don't really know that much about it, but I had heard the other Vella authors talking about it. But I didn't think much of it. I knew that, I haven't been there long, haven't had that many reads, so I wasn't expecting much, if anything. But I actually did end up getting a really nice bonus from last month, and it was really encouraging because it actually goes a long way toward gets me really close to already making back what I spent on publishing the book. And I never know, that's always my first concern, to at least make sure I'm not wasting money. And so that was just so encouraging because it can be already, I'm taking time to spend on this and effort, and, just knowing that I'm getting, just being able to get something back from it is it's just so encouraging, and it just helps motivation and makes me feel like, I have 2 goals with this. And honestly, my first goal is just to get my writing out there for people to enjoy. Like, honestly, that is my number 1 goal. But if I can make money with it too, it is a huge blessing to my family, obviously. And so being able to see some of that happening was just really totally made my day, of course, and just got me excited. Also, the fact that I went outside my comfort zone and tried something new for this book, and that it's, been paying off better than I was expecting, is just really nice. So I've been excited about that. Number 3, so excited about this. I have got my blog back. If you didn't see, it is now, instead of jgracepennington.com, it is under jgracetheauthor.com. And I still have not been successful in buying jgracepennington.com. And I'm not really worried about eventually getting it back because, again, I know that that's not anybody else's name. There's no other J. Grace Penningtons out there. So I'm content to just, I have a certain amount that I'm willing to pay for it, and I'm not going to go above that. So I can just keep throwing that offer at this person who has it all day, for however long. And and it helps now. I don't feel like I'm in any rush because I just was like, I'm getting serious about building my business. I need to have an author website. Like, that's really important to give people somewhere they can go and see everything in one place, really connect with people, etc. And so I decided I'm just going to go ahead and buy a different domain and just have my website there for now. But then I've done that before with the Firmament series website when I had issues with that domain, and I don't remember it being very difficult. But for whatever, I don't remember at all what I did, and whatever it was, I couldn't do it with this website. Like, I could not get everything to move over. And so in desperation, finally, and I do not like asking for help. I don't know whether it's pride. It probably is some pride involved, but I also know I just don't want to feel that I'm inconveniencing anyone, or don't want to feel like, like, oh, they have other things to do, like whatever. I don't know. It's probably some whole problem I need to deal with. But I finally did reach out on Facebook and just say, hey, does anybody have any tips for me, any help for me, whatever. And I had quite a few people, quite a few friends that reached out and said, like, hey, just, call me or message me or let me know exactly what's going on, or you can try this and that. Like, so many people that took time or were willing to take time to help me. And it was, even just that was such an encouragement to me. Like, what a blessing. But then one friend in particular just said, oh, like, I can do that easily. If you're comfortable letting me work on it, giving me the login, then I can get that done for you. And she did. She went in and took care of it for me, took time out of her day. And I was so, so humbled and, grateful for that. And it just reminds me, like, I need to be willing to ask for help. I need to, because people do need help, and it is like, I know that I am blessed when I can help someone else. So why do I feel so hesitant to allow other people that blessing as well? But anyway, so I do have my website now, and I've been able to start getting some blog posts out again. And I think I might have mentioned also working on a newsletter and getting that rolling again. So yeah, all kinds of really exciting things going on over here. Number 4 for a little kid anecdote of the week. So Violet, I think I had talked about how I showed her how she could find the purple color by looking for the word violet on it. And another thing that I did to try to help her this last week is she has this little preschool workbook that deals with just things like cutting, coloring, tracing, basic kind of preschool type, early, motor skills, things like that. And so it'll tell you particular colors to color certain things on the page. And they kind of try to associate a shape with each color. And some of them she remembers, but not most of them. And I don't remember any of them, so I don't blame her for that. But so of course she'll want to ask me on each page, what color is this supposed to be or whatever. And so I started telling her, like, what you can do if you look at the first letter and see what sound it makes, because she knows all her letter sounds, maybe you can figure out what the color is. Because, obviously that won't work for all of them, but, if she sees the letter Y, she can figure out that it's yellow. And so I kind of went over it with her for maybe 5 or 6 of them and just was like, okay, so you see, here's a B, and the B goes but, and then there's an L, so what do you think that is? And she was able to kind of figure out, like, oh, it's blue, or whatever, with my help. And so then I was kind of back and forth doing some chores, and at one point I was in the other room and she yelled, "Mommy, it's green, I see it's green." And I came back in, and sure enough, the word she was pointing out was green, and she was able to figure out because of the letter G. So I was really proud of her and impressed with that. And I'm like, hey, it's such a big step on the way to reading. So I'm just so excited for her to read. And, I'm not wanting to push it or, try to get her to do it before she's ready. But as I see just like small opportunities that fit into what she's already doing, where it's not something she's going to be frustrated with at all, but just something that she can discover and work on in a fun way, I try to implement those things. And so seeing her get to do that, she was really excited and I was super excited, and it was just so fun. So yeah, I love those moments. Number 5 on my currently reading, I decided to reread Stepping Heavenward, which I have read probably at least like 20 times before. Like I've read it so many times. It's one of my definitely like top 5 favorite books ever. But it had been a really long time since I read it. Like I think I might have reread it last when we were early married, but not since we had kids, I don't believe. So partly I had just been wanting to reread it because I have found when I read it at different stages in my life, I will get, I'll obviously relate to a different part of it, a different part of where the character is in her life, and get something different out of it. So I'd been wanting to, and then it was next on my bookshelf anyway, so it just worked. But one thing I always find myself wondering as I read it, and of course I wonder this with many books, is, how much of this is autobiographical? And I feel like so much of it has to be at least elements of that, because it just rings so true. And especially when a book is like that, where it's just like real life, it's just general fiction. There's nothing, it's not like genre fiction. There's nothing crazy about it. It's just life. And when it does feel so real and so honest, you have to feel that obviously the author did put some of themselves in there. And so you just kind of makes you curious how much. And I always then, I think I've mentioned this before, think about that with my writing. Like I know people will be wondering that. And especially my book Shows, that I'm hoping to release at some point. It does have a lot of personal elements, and but a lot of it is, completely fictional events, but there are a lot of also things that I have been through or have gone through, or things that I don't know. There's just definitely a lot of me in it. And so I always wonder as I'm reading this book in particular, I find myself, because I know that the author, Elizabeth Prentiss, I know that, she was married and had kids. And so then when you read about those parts, or about how she, the character meets her husband and gets married and has these struggles in her marriage, you kind of wonder like, oh, like how much of that was a reflection of the author's marriage? Like it just makes you wonder. And I am convinced that it had to have been a significant amount of it had to have been autobiographical, because it does just feel so real and so relatable. But anyway, I just started it yesterday, so not very far, but I think it'll be really valuable to reread. And again, it also makes me think of, obviously this is a long way away, but sharing it with Violet someday. And I remember my mom gave it to me when I was 16. And so thinking forward to that and being able to share things like that with my girls is just so exciting for me. Number 6, I actually decided to talk through a little bit. There's an article that I'm writing, so y'all are going to get a little sneak peek of it. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it when I'm done, but I'm going to, try sending it to a few different people. I have a few magazines that I've kind of marked as potential. So I wrote a first draft of this article yesterday, and it needs a lot of work, but I thought I would just talk about it a little bit and how it does relate to my writing and marketing. So the topic is the word can't and the way that we use it. And one thing I've just noticed so many times when I say things to people that I'm doing or that I've done or ways that I'm living my life, people will have the response, oh, I could never do that, or I couldn't do that, or I can't do that, or whatever. And I always just hate hearing that, because I don't say this because I don't want to be rude or, judgmental or anything, but I always think you can, though. You could if you wanted to. And honestly though, one reason I don't say it is because I don't want to sound like, well, you can and you should. I don't know. Like, I feel like it can definitely have a condescending sound to say something like that. But what I mean is just saying can't is actually putting yourself in a position of self-limitation and kind of holding yourself a prisoner to that. And one thing I found is that not saying can't doesn't mean you have to say you will. So a lot of times it's valuable just to be actually honest and face what you're really saying. Because usually when people say that, like, obviously there are things you physically, literally cannot do. And that's what that word means. And that is totally fine. But there's also things that are just really hard, or you just really don't want to do, or you don't think is a good idea. And all of those can be and often are totally valid. So like maybe when it comes to, let's say, exercising every day, people will, you could say, oh, I can't do that for this or that reason. And there might be reasons you think you can't do it, and be like, well, you could. And maybe it would take something really extreme. Like maybe it would be like, well, I could if I, got up at 1 a.m. or something like crazy. I don't know. And so it doesn't mean, like, not saying the word can't doesn't mean you have to do it. Like you could say, well, I could exercise every day, but it's not a priority for me right now. Or I'm, I don't know, whatever, I don't want to do that right now. Like, just be honest about whatever the actual issue is. And I feel like we don't like that because sometimes it's easier just to say can't and move on with it. But if you're being honest about what's really going on, then you're giving yourself agency and power over what's happening. So just, and it's totally fine to say, you know what, like, this is your life, this is your family. You can say, you know what, getting up at, 1 a.m. to exercise is not going to be good for us. Or you could say, I know that I could exercise every day if I didn't, do this other thing I'm doing, but I'm prioritizing this other thing, and that's fine. But you're being honest about what's happening, and you're having control over your own choices. And so I have really had to own that when it comes to my writing and marketing, because I definitely have a lot of reasons that I can say, oh, I just can't do writing right now. I can't, I don't have energy to market my books, like blah, blah, blah. I have all this going on in my life. And there are things that I have said, like, I only do my writing, marketing, all that stuff. I will only do it during nap time or after the girls go to bed, because I do know that it is a much bigger priority to me to be present with my kids and to run my house well than to do my writing. And so I've committed not to be getting work done, while they're up and while I need to take care of them. So that's a priority for me. But one thing I found is that then I don't want to give up time I could have just to be like resting or whatever during nap time or, after bedtime or whatever. And rest is important. And so I am also, like, I always do my reading. I'll sit down with a snack and read a book first at nap time. So I am having some time to just like recharge before I go into more work. But I just found that for me, if I was being honest with myself, that writing and really working to get my books out there was something that was important to me. And so I needed to face the fact that I could do it if I wanted, and look at what it was going to take for me to do that and see if that was something I was willing to do. And if it wasn't, that would also be fine. Like, writing and marketing my books is not something I have to do. It's not a right or wrong thing, and there are seasons where I do think it probably will need to go on the back burner, seasons where it has, and that's also totally fine. But in general, it is important to me that this is part of my life, and I do think it's a gift that God has given me, and I want to steward it wisely and well. And so I wanted to really face it honestly and look at what I can do, what I'm willing to do, what I'm going to prioritize, rather than just shutting myself down by saying I can't do that. And so anyway, I just feel so strongly about this because I want people to know, and also just to have the freedom to say, I don't want to do that.